Hey, Days of Our Lives, it's Radhika from Radhika Storyline, and we're going to talk about Days of Our Lives. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, this week on Days of Our Lives, we have spoilers running from Monday, July 20th through Friday, July 24th, and I have to say, this whole slate feels like one of those weeks where half the town is dealing with emotional fallout while the other half is quietly setting up the next disaster. And honestly, that is prime soap territory. Nothing in Salem ever just happens. It lands, it ripples, it creates three more problems, and then somebody acts shocked like they have never lived there before. So, on Monday, Rafe lends Gabby an ear and a shoulder, and right away that tells me Gabby is dealing with something heavy enough that she needs comfort, not just strategy. And I always like scenes like that because when Gabby lets the guard down even a little bit, it matters. She is not exactly the poster child for vulnerability, so if she is leaning on Rafe, then whatever is on her mind is not small. And of course, Rafe stepping in as the supportive brother figure feels very on brand, very grounding, and probably necessary because the rest of this week is chaos. And then Chad and Belle realize all clues point toward Italy, which, that is one of those spoilers that instantly sounds bigger than the one sentence it gets. When Days starts pointing all clues anywhere, you know we are talking about a trail, a mystery, a loose end, or some long-buried connection that is finally getting dragged into daylight. Italy is not just around the corner, so the fact that Chad and Belle are the ones piecing this together makes it feel important and maybe a little glamorous, but also ominous. Because on this show, travel clues are rarely about a nice vacation. They are about secrets, danger, and somebody finding out something they were not supposed to know. And then Leo makes a difficult admission to Marlena, and I already know that conversation is going to be juicy, awkward, emotional, or all three. Leo does not go to Marlena for light chit-chat. If he is making a difficult admission, then this is something he has probably been sitting on, spinning around, maybe trying to talk himself out of saying. And Marlena being the one to hear it means it has real emotional weight. She is the kind of character people go to when the truth is too big to keep bottled up, so I am very curious about what Leo finally lets out. Honestly, whenever a spoiler uses the word admission, my ears perk up because it usually means somebody's whole week is about to change. And Monday also gives us EJ apologizing to Kat, which, let's be real, is interesting mostly because EJ does not apologize unless there is a reason, a strategy, or a fire he is trying to put out. Maybe it is sincere. Maybe. But with EJ, I always hear an apology and immediately wonder what the next move is. Is this guilt, damage control, or one of those classic soap apologies where the words sound nice, but the timing is suspicious? Because timing is everything, and with Johnny confronting EJ later in the week, this feels like the beginning of a pressure build. And then Sarah and Tate confront Holly. So now we are immediately sliding into the Holly mess, and honestly, that storyline already sounds tense because a confrontation means people are worried enough to stop dancing around the issue. If Sarah and Tate are both stepping in, then Holly is not just having a little awkward moment. They are alarmed. They think something is wrong. And knowing the spoilers later say Holly continues to deny taking drugs, that means Monday's confrontation is not some quick misunderstanding that gets wrapped up in a neat bow. No, this is the start of a week-long denial spiral, and those are never fun. Now, on Tuesday, Kristen proposes an escape plan to Lexi, and I am sorry, but you cannot just drop Kristen and escape plan into the same sentence and expect me to be calm about it. That is diabolical by default. Maybe it is emotional, maybe it is practical, maybe it is well-intentioned in whatever Kristen version of well-intentioned exists, but an escape plan from Kristen sounds like the kind of thing that could go off the rails in record time. And the fact that Lexi is also getting a vow exchange later in the week with Abe makes me look at this twice, because those two spoilers sitting so close together feels very deliberate. Salem does not hand out peace without a catch. And then Gabby blindsides Xander and Philip, which, honestly, I loved on paper before even seeing it. Because if Gabby is doing the blindsiding, you know it is not going to be timid. She is not going to gently inconvenience people. She is going to walk in, drop a shocker, and leave everybody staring at each other like the floor just disappeared. Xander and Philip being caught off guard together is especially interesting because that suggests whatever Gabby does hits both of them in a way they did not anticipate. And I always enjoy when overly confident men get reminded that they are not the only ones capable of playing offense. That is just satisfying television. And Tuesday also has Eli and Lonnie celebrating their anniversary, which sounds like one of the week's softer notes, and thank goodness, because Salem needs at least one pocket of warmth before the next reign of terror starts. I like that spoiler because anniversary scenes can either be sweet breathing room or they can be calm before the storm. With Days, it can truly go either way. Still, I am hoping that for at least a minute, those two get something nice. And Foster apologizes to Julie, which makes me pause because Julie apology scenes always have an extra bite to them. She is not exactly going to pat someone on the head and say all is well if she does not feel it. So whatever this apology is about, I am betting it matters emotionally, even if it is not the week's biggest headline. And sometimes these smaller scenes end up carrying a lot because they change how characters move forward. So then Wednesday rolls around, and Kayla makes Kat an offer. Again, that sounds simple, but simple spoilers on Days can hide a lot. An offer from Kayla could be support, opportunity, advice, or something that puts Kat on a totally different path. And because EJ already apologized to Kat on Monday, I cannot help looking at Kat as somebody who may be quietly at the center of multiple emotional currents this week. When more than one character starts orbiting somebody in the spoiler rundown, that person matters. And EJ shares his concerns with Rita, which is classic. If EJ is confiding concerns, then whatever he thought he had under control clearly is not under control. And Rita getting pulled into it tells me, this is not just private angst. This is strategic angst. This is I see a threat coming, and I need to figure out how bad it could get energy. Honestly, EJ is often most entertaining when the mask slips just enough for us to see the panic underneath the polish. And then Holly continues to deny taking drugs, which means the confrontation on Monday did not settle anything. Not even close. And that is where the Holly stuff gets more interesting and more uncomfortable because once a character keeps denying something while everybody around them is pressing the issue, the story is no longer just about accusation. It becomes about trust, perception, fear, and who is actually seeing the situation clearly. Is Holly lying? Is she scared? Is she being judged too fast? That uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story moving. And then Gabby and Leo team up, and honestly, that sounds messy in the best possible way. Gabby is sharp, Leo is chaotic, and putting those two together means somebody somewhere should probably be worried. Their styles are different, but that can be what makes an alliance fun. If Gabby has a target and Leo has information, attitude, or motive, then this pairing could stir up the week in a major way. And since Leo also has Marlena on Monday and Melindo on Friday, he is clearly threaded all through this week's drama. And Sarah turns to Xander for help, which is interesting because just a couple of days earlier Gabby blindsides Xander and Philip, and now Sarah is coming to Xander. So Xander is in the middle of multiple pressure points. And when Sarah turns to him specifically, that tells me either she trusts him in this moment, needs something only he can provide, or both. It also sets up their Friday peace beat in a way that makes sense. You do not give a couple a rare moment of peace unless you have put them through some tension first. Now, Thursday brings Abe and Lexi exchanging vows and rings, and that absolutely sounds like the emotional centerpiece of the week. Weddings, vow renewals, ring exchanges, whatever exact form it takes, soap ceremonies are never just ceremonies. They are pressure cookers. They are beautiful until somebody interrupts them, hides something at them, reveals something during them, or makes them bittersweet with some outside complication. Still, there is something genuinely lovely in the image of Abe and Lexi exchanging vows and rings. Salem can do romance when it wants to, even if it usually insists on adding a little smoke around the edges. And Kristen shares a heartfelt moment with Rachel, which, okay, that is probably going to land for people because no matter how wild Kristen gets, these quieter emotional beats can make her feel more human. And I think that matters especially in a week where she is also pitching an escape plan. You get that balance of tenderness and threat, and honestly, that is how soaps keep characters layered. Nobody is just one thing all the time, even when they are berserk half the month. And Sean makes his feelings clear to Jada. So now we have another emotionally direct spoiler, and those are the ones I always circle because makes his feelings clear means no ambiguity, no drifting, no accidental mixed signals. Sean is going to say something, and Jada is going to have to deal with it. Whether that brings relief, tension, or disaster depends on what exactly is said, but either way, that is movement. And this show always needs movement. And Chad offers Alex support, which is kind of fascinating in light of the little editorial jab buried in the raw material about double standard much, Alex. Because that tells me Alex is already under some side-eye and, honestly, probably deserves at least part of it. So if Chad is offering support, maybe Alex is struggling, maybe he is being called out, maybe he is emotionally unglued, or maybe all of the above. Support scenes can be nice, but they can also underline that someone is spinning out. And then Stephanie vents to Belle, which I like because venting scenes are how the audience gets the emotional truth. People behave one way in the middle of drama, then they sit down with the right person and say what they really think, and suddenly the whole storyline clicks. Belle is getting a lot this week between the Italy clues and Stephanie unloading on her, so she may quietly be functioning as one of the week's emotional hubs. And then on Friday, Sarah and Xander enjoy a rare moment of peace, which, first of all, the word rare is doing a lot of work there. Days is basically telling us not to get too comfortable. If they are getting peace, it is temporary, fragile, probably earned, and maybe sitting right on top of the next problem. But I do appreciate that beat because constant angst gets exhausting if there is never any payoff. Even one quiet scene can matter. And Steve and Kayla worry about what is coming next, which is not ominous at all, said no one ever. That spoiler sounds like the show practically winking at us and saying, yes, there is another shoe, and yes, it is about to drop. If Steve and Kayla are both worried, then the concern is bigger than one little personal issue. It feels broader than that, heavier than that, like they can sense a storm building. And then Johnny confronts EJ, and there we go. There is the Friday explosion. I mean, come on, you can almost hear the tension in that one line. Johnny confronting EJ at the end of a week that already included EJ apologizing to Kat and sharing concerns with Rita? That is not random. That is escalation. That is a man trying to manage the narrative all week and then getting cornered anyway. And when it is Johnny doing the confronting, family pain is automatically part of the equation. Those scenes hit harder because it is not just conflict. It is betrayal, disappointment, history, pride, and all the things nobody ever truly gets over in Salem. And finally, Melinda agrees to help Leo, which closes the week by looping back to Leo's difficult admission and whatever mess he is carrying. If Leo ends the week securing help from Melinda, then I am guessing his problem is not small, not fleeting, and definitely not solved by one emotional chat with Marlena. It has legs. It has consequences. It may even have the potential to pull other people into the blast zone. So, that is the basic week as laid out in the spoilers, and honestly, it is a pretty loaded one. You have mystery energy with Italy, emotional stakes with Leo and Marlena, power moves from Gabby, denial and concern around Holly, a major romantic event for Abe and Lexi, and then that EJ-Johnny confrontation hanging over Friday like a thundercloud. And I have to say, I am especially intrigued by how these storylines seem to overlap without fully showing their hand yet. That is when Days is at its most addictive, when you can feel the disaster forming but you cannot quite map every piece yet. So let's talk theories because this is where the week really opens up for me. First up, I absolutely suspect the Italy clue is more than just a breadcrumb for Chad and Belle. I think that spoiler is planted early in the week because it is going to inform the emotional mood around several other characters, even if they are not all directly involved. When a clue trail points somewhere specific like Italy, it suggests history, distance, and the possibility that somebody has been hiding something in plain sight. And because Chad and Belle are the ones realizing it together, I am betting the show wants us to pay attention not just to the destination, but to the process of discovery. My guess is that the Italy thread becomes one of those stories where every answer leads to another question, and instead of resolving quickly, it cracks open something larger. I could see it being the kind of thing that starts with detective work and ends with emotional collateral damage. On this show, clues are rarely just clues. They are emotional landmines. And honestly, I wonder if the Italy revelation is going to sharpen Belle's role in the week more than we expect. She is not only involved in that clue trail, she is also the person Stephanie vents to later. So if Belle is spending the week hearing secrets, complaints, and puzzle pieces from different corners of Salem, she could become one of those accidental central figures who sees the whole board before anyone else does. That would be interesting. And it would fit the spoiler pattern. Not because we have confirmation of that, we do not, but because the week keeps placing Belle in rooms where important information is being exchanged. That is never nothing. Next, I am betting Leo's difficult admission to Marlena is the emotional spine of his week, and Melinda agreeing to help him on Friday tells me the confession probably opens a door rather than closes one. So maybe Leo goes to Marlena first because he needs emotional honesty, and then by the end of the week, he needs practical help. That progression makes total sense. And it makes me think whatever he admits is not just embarrassing or sad, but actionable. Something has to be done. Somebody has to step in. And because Gabby and Leo team up midweek, I wonder if Leo's personal crisis and his scheming energy somehow collide. That would be very Leo, honestly. He can be hurting and meddling at the same time. And I mean, there is also the possibility that Leo's confession puts him in a vulnerable spot that changes how other people deal with him. Marlena is usually not going to meet a difficult truth with cruelty. If anything, she may be the one person who hears Leo out without instantly dismissing him. And if Melinda later agrees to help, maybe Leo manages to convince people that this is serious enough to warrant real backup. I suspect the show could use this storyline to let Leo be more than comic chaos for a minute. Still chaotic, yes, because that is part of the charm, but also emotionally exposed. And when Leo is emotionally exposed, the writing can get surprisingly sharp. Another possibility is that Gabby is about to run this week more than people realize. And I say that because look at the pattern. Rafe comforts her. Then she blindsides Xander and Philip. Then she teams up with Leo. That is not background activity. That is a character moving through multiple story lanes with purpose. So, I am betting Gabby starts the week emotionally pressured and ends up channeling that into action. That is classic Gabby. She may cry in the first act, sure, but by the second act she is already planning how to regain control. And if Xander and Philip really are caught off guard, then her move must be bold enough to shift the balance somewhere. Now, I do not want to overstate it, because the spoilers do not tell us exactly what she does, but I could absolutely see Gabby forcing the men around her to react rather than dictate. And honestly, that is when Gabby is most fun. She does not just survive a bad situation, she often flips it. So if she is teaming with Leo after blindsiding Xander and Philip, I wonder if she is creating an alliance of convenience to exploit a loose end, expose something, or push a situation further than anyone expected. Is that dangerous? Sure. Is it potentially glorious? Also yes. And if Rafe is the one hearing her out on Monday, maybe that emotional support gives her just enough steadiness to go do something reckless by Tuesday. You know, healing Salem style.